What drove al-Rahman III to claim a title no Umayyad in al-Andalus had dared to use for nearly 2 centuries? What if I told you that the Umayyads feared a threat greater than the Christians of the north? I'm David Cott, host of New History of Spain, and in episode 42 we will explore how al-Rahman III restored unity in al-Andalus, as well as what was going on in the north in the 920s. The partition of the Banu Qasi domains. After King Sancho Garcés killed the last great leader of the Banu Qasi, Lup ibn Muhammad, in 907, the people of Pamplona pushed south and incorporated new lands, while the Mualad clan fell into internal strife. Meanwhile, Muhammad al-Tawil of Huesca, before dying at the hands of Count Sunyer of Barcelona in 913, recaptured Barbastro, Monzon, and Lleida from Lup ibn Muhammad. Sancho took full advantage of the fratricidal wars among the Banu Qasi. In 915, he attacked Tudela and captured its lord, releasing him only after the clan ceded the Navarrese fortresses of Falces and Caparroso and delivered his children as hostages. They later converted to Christianity, and the daughter married King Fruela II of Asturias and León. The vultures were feasting on the corpse of the Banu Qasi, which smelled more and more like death. The Banu Qasi weakened themselves, and the same happened among the sons of Muhammad al-Tawil. According to Ibn Hayyan, from 918 onward, King Sancho I of Pamplona and King Ordoño II of León allied to seize Banu Qasi lands. They attacked Nájera and Tudela in 918, causing destruction but failing to capture them. They did conquer Arnedo and Calahorra. We ended episode 41, how al-Rahman III of Córdoba saved the Umayyad dynasty, with an Andalusi defeat at San Esteban de Gormaz in Soria province. Al-Rahman III could not leave this unanswered, so he sent an army under his Hajib, Badr, who defeated the Christians, and in 920 he personally led the so-called campaign of Muez, passing through Castile and sacking Osma, San Esteban de Gormaz, and Clunia. After lifting the siege of Viguera, he entered the kingdom of Pamplona and won the Battle of Valdejunquera against the Christian coalition. Nearby stood the castle of Muez, where several hundred soldiers had taken refuge. The castle was captured and its defenders executed before the emir. The Umayyad army seized much booty, and chronicles highlight this campaign as marking the final decline of the Banu Qasi, who by then ruled only Tudela. Yet this didn't end the ambitions of Sancho and Ordoño, who reinforced their alliance when Ordoño II repudiated his Galician wife and married a daughter of the monarchs of Pamplona. A failed Andalusi offensive against Pamplona was followed by the Navarrese conquering Viguera in 922 and the Leonese taking Nájera the following year. In this campaign, Sancho I Garcés killed the Lord of Tudela, making it easier for al-Rahman III to replace the Banu Qasi with more loyal officials. These Christian advances forced al-Rahman III to act. Jihad against the Christians was the perfect excuse to reassert authority in distant Andalusi regions and demand taxes and levies. Knowing that, the Arab Tuyyibid clan, lords of Zaragoza and Daroca, took control of Tudela but promptly handed it to the emir and asked him to appoint a governor. Before invading Navarre in 924, the emir's army made a wide detour through Murcia, Valencia, and Tortosa to reaffirm Umayyad authority, and on the return journey passed through Santander to subdue the Banu Dilnun, who began paying tribute in 927. In the campaign of Pamplona of 924, the Andalusi army passed through most of Navarre and reached its capital, which they found deserted. King Sancho I had evacuated the population into the mountains, where Muslims feared ambushes. León was not a military target because internal problems following King Ordoño's death meant they could not assist Pamplona, though some Castilians helped in the defense. al-Rahman III entered Pamplona and ordered its destruction, including its church. The damage was vast and demonstrated the military superiority of al-Andalus at this moment, although it failed to secure territorial gains or intimidate the Pamplonese ruler. Notably, the Banu Qasi are absent from the account of the campaign. Only one Banu Qasi remained in power in the eastern Upper March. According to chronicler Al-Udri, he ruled Lleida, Balaguer, and nearby castles until expelled by local notables in 927. He fled to the county of Ribagorza, where he was assassinated in 929. History's last mention of the Banu Qasi, that once powerful clan of Muslims of native origin who had traveled both Umayyads and Northern Christians. Their core territory of La Rioja was divided among different powers. Between 918 and 924, the Pamplona-León alliance conquered the western half of La Rioja province. The main beneficiary was the Kingdom of Pamplona, which took southern Navarre, Nájera, Viguera, and Albelda de Iregua. Although León briefly occupied Nájera, after the Andalusi counteroffensive, the city ended up in Pamplonese hands. The Christian victory in dividing up the Banu Qasi lands was not absolute. The harsh 924 counteroffensive showed that. But the Muslims did not reconquer the Riojan territories. Why not? La Rioja had been subdued through pacts during the Muslim conquest and never attracted Arab or Berber settlers. The small Muslim population either emigrated or converted, and the western half was difficult to defend. al-Rahman III preferred losing likely Islamized and unreliable territories in exchange for strengthening central authority in the frontier marches. The lands of the Banu Qasi ended up divided among the Pamplonese, the Castilians, and the Muslim lords of the Upper March. The Tuyibids of Zaragoza took Arnedo, and eastern La Rioja remained in Muslim hands until well into the 11th century. As Córdoba intended, La Rioja became a strategic buffer between the Christian realms and the wealthier Middle Ebro Valley, where Islamic rule was strong. Power struggles in León, 924-932. King Ordoño II died in early 924, shortly before the destructive campaign of Pamplona. Fruela II of Asturias inherited all his territories, as likely agreed when the three brothers divided the kingdom in 910. Leonese chroniclers portray Fruela II's brief one-year reign negatively, speaking of unjust purges. Because of that, they say God punished him with leprosy, though these accounts were shaped by the later triumph of Ordoño II's lineage. When Fruela II died in 925, a succession crisis erupted. García I's earlier death had caused no dispute because he left no children, but both Ordoño and Fruela had sons who claimed the throne. Fruela's son was Alfonso Froilaz. Ordoño's sons were Alfonso, Sancho, and Ramiro. The lack of clear succession rules split the monarchy and benefited the Kingdom of Pamplona despite its recent devastation from the Umayyad campaign. Arabic sources note that Alfonso Froilaz initially succeeded his father, but the sons of Ordoño II soon expelled him and he fled to Asturias, his family's power base. Yet, the sons of Ordoño also clashed. Sancho, the elder, gained Galician support, including northern Portugal, through marriage alliances and the backing of his brother Ramiro. Alfonso, on the other hand, relied on his father-in-law Sancho I of Pamplona, then the most powerful Christian monarch of Iberia. Alfonso Ordóñez lost the first encounter and sought refuge in Astorga, where he allied with his cousin Alfonso Froilaz. With Pamplonese military aid, the two Alfonsos defeated Sancho and forced negotiations to partition the kingdom as had been done before. Alfonso Ordóñez became Alfonso IV of León, because historiography did not count Alfonso Froilaz. Although recognized as senior king, his actual authority was limited. Sancho ruled Galicia until 929, Ramiro governed Viseu and Coimbra, and Alfonso Froilaz held Asturias. Alfonso IV later received the epithet the monk because in 931 he abdicated in favor of Ramiro and entered the Leonese monastery of Sahagún, shaken by his wife's death. He soon regretted the decision, whether from ambition or fear stirred by Ramiro's enemies, and attempted to return to the throne. His first escape from Sahagún ended quickly. His relatives rebuked him and he returned to monastic life. But he escaped a second time, now truly initiating a new civil war. Supported by the leader of the Banu Gómez, who ruled in the lands between León and Burgos, the dispossessed Count of Burgos and other aristocrats, he ravaged Leonese territories and defeated one of Ramiro's armies. Alfonso IV occupied Simancas and León during Ramiro's absence, as the king was in Zamora preparing to aid Toledo, whose population desired to preserve their self-governance against Córdoba. Ramiro II would then yield the throne to his capricious brother. Unable to send a strong army to Toledo, which soon fell to the Umayyads, he concentrated on retaking León. In 932, Ramiro captured Alfonso IV, Alfonso Froilaz, and Fruela II's other sons. To eliminate future threats, he had them blinded and confined to a monastery. Thus, Ramiro II secured his position as sole king over reunified León. The legacy of Sancho I of Pamplona. The first king of the Jimena or Sancha dynasty expanded Pamplona to encompass nearly all modern Navarre and parts of La Rioja. He exerted hegemony over Aragon, Ribagorza, Pallars, the fractured Kingdom of León, and Basque territories where political structures were weak or non-existent, such as Biscay, whose Count Momo married a daughter of the king of Pamplona. Sancho also cultivated ties with the Banu Altawil of Huesca and their relatives in Ribagorza and Pallars. More importantly, Pamplona took control of the small county of Aragon. Although the Aragonese count had helped elevate the Sancha dynasty in Pamplona, Sancho Garcés did not reward him with lasting autonomy. The count married his heiress daughter to the Pamplonese heir. Since the days of Íñigo Arista, Aragon had remained in Pamplona's orbit, but Sancho laid the foundations for its eventual incorporation as another Pamplonese territory. Only after the death of Sancho III the Great in 1035 did Pamplona split, giving rise to an independent Kingdom of Aragon. Sancho I died in 925 or 926, reportedly as a result of an accident after a successful campaign, possibly following his intervention in León's civil war on behalf of his son-in-law Alfonso IV. His heir, García Sánchez, was only 6 years old, so his uncle, Jimeno, served as regent along with Queen Toda until Jimeno's death in 931. Thereafter, Toda ruled de facto, even after García reached his majority. One interpretation by a scholar José María Lacarra suggests Jimeno's death triggered a dynastic struggle, with another claimant attempting to seize the throne. In this account, Queen Toda sought the protection of her nephew, Caliph al-Rahman III of Córdoba, who arrived with his army and presided over García Sánchez's coronation in 934. This came after García accepted a formal submission of Pamplona to the Caliphate. But the vassalage or tributary status was short-lived, and the Caliph returned in 937 to punish Pamplona for its renewed defiance. Though these displays of submission occurred, I see little evidence for a severe internal crisis after Jimeno's death. Contemporary sources indicate that Toda's 934 submission was a pragmatic act to prevent Umayyad devastation as their army planned to march through her kingdom. Unlike León, Pamplona weathered the dangers of a royal minority without major instability, thanks largely to Queen Toda's political skill and her success in preserving the territories her husband had acquired. The end of the Hafsunid Rebellion. The most troublesome Andalusi rebel, Umar ibn Hafsun, died in 918, leaving 4 sons, Jafar, Suleiman, al-Rahman, and Hafs, who prolonged their father's exhausted revolt for another decade. Jafar, the eldest and designed heir, had reportedly converted to Christianity as his father had supposedly done. To strengthen his rule, he dismissed the bishop of Bobastro and other opponents and sought confirmation of his authority from the emir, who granted it after Jafar sent one of his sons as a hostage in recognition of Umar's late displays of loyalty. Jafar's loyalty soon wavered, and in 919, al-Rahman III and his Hajib Badr led an expedition against his fortresses, which were captured. Muslim defenders were pardoned, Christian fighters were executed, and the lands around Bobastro were devastated to weaken its economy. Another of Umar's sons, also named al-Rahman, surrendered the fortress of Ojén and was taken to Córdoba, where he spent the rest of his life working as a calligrapher. Jafar's weakened authority led to his assassination, possibly instigated by the emir or by his brother Suleiman. Suleiman had earlier accepted Umayyad service after 2 uprisings in Úbeda and had even fought in the Muez campaign against Leonese and Pamplonese forces. But after Jafar's death, he seized Bobastro, reclaimed Hafsunid leadership, and reignited rebellion. He attacked fortresses in Málaga, Elvira, and Almería, prompting effective annual Umayyad campaigns. In one of these, Hafs, the only brother still loyal to Suleiman, was captured. The emir pardoned him and granted him a command, likely to show distrust and further weaken Suleiman's leadership. By this time, the Hafsunids controlled only a few fortresses in the Málaga district. In 927, Suleiman was captured and beheaded near Bobastro, Some chroniclers claim his body was dismembered and later reassembled and crucified in Córdoba as a warning to other rebels. The revolt continued briefly under Hafs, but after a 6-month siege, Bobastro surrendered in January 928. Hafs received a pardon and joined the professional Umayyad army. Thus ended the Hafsunid Rebellion, which for decades had troubled Córdoba. Shortly afterward, the emir inspected Bobastro, admired its defenses, and ordered its churches destroyed. A pressing question remained: had Umar and Jafar truly converted to Christianity? They had been buried according to Christian rites, according to Arabic chroniclers, eager to portray Umayyad victory as triumph over apostasy and treason. A furious al-Rahman ordered the exhumation of Umar, Jafar, and Suleiman, and their corpses were displayed crucified in Córdoba for more than a decade. Bobastro itself was destroyed to erase the memory of sedition. The fall of the Hafsunids was celebrated as the final step in the reunification of al-Andalus and the end of the Fitna of the Emirate. It was only a matter of time before all the frontier regions submitted. al-Rahman III of Córdoba proclaims himself Caliph. Only months after the fall of Bobastro, one of the most consequential events in Andalusi history occurred. On January 16, 929, al-Rahman III proclaimed himself Caliph, commander of the faithful. From then on, he was invoked in Friday sermons across the mosques of al-Andalus and pro-Umayyad regions of the Maghreb. Although the Caliphate of Córdoba lasted less than a century, it represented the peak of Andalusi political, military, and economic power both within and beyond the Iberian Peninsula. The proclamation did not create a new state, but reinforced central authority, prosperity, and the projection of Umayyad influence. Remember that the Caliph was the political and spiritual leader of Muslims and protector of Jews and Christians living under Islamic rule, whose role was also to safeguard religious unity and orthodoxy and protect Muslims from tyrants and external enemies. Traditionally, there could only be one Caliph, which is why al-Rahman I had not taken the title. But by the 10th century, it was clear that the Islamic world was fragmented, and in North Africa, a man claiming descent from the Prophet had already proclaimed himself Caliph and Mahdi. If two caliphs already existed, why should the heir of the caliphs of Damascus accept remaining emir, a secular ruler? Internal and external factors convinced al-Rahman III to assume the caliphal title. He presented himself as the restorer of unity after the troubles of the Fitna, and as a defender of orthodoxy against heretics and apostates. His ancestry linked him to the Umayyad caliphs of Damascus, who had ruled the entire Muslim community from 661 to 750. That he didn't control the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, or that other rulers claimed the same title, did not deter him. The Abbasids had seized the caliphate and were now puppets of military and court factions who controlled little more than Iraq. And shortly after the proclamation of the Caliphate of Córdoba, the Abbasids suffered a humiliating blow when a Shia group sacked Mecca and carried off the black stone of the Kaaba, revealing their inability to protect the holy cities. The sack shocked the entire Muslim community and revealed that the Abbasids could not fulfill their obligation to protect Mecca and the pilgrimage routes. The Umayyads argued that Abbasid weakness proved their loss of divine favor. In this view of history, the survival of the Umayyads through repeated crises that almost destroyed them signaled their legitimacy and redemption. Yet the adoption of the caliphal title by the Umayyads of Córdoba was an ideological weapon against the Fatimids more than the Abbasids. The Shia Fatimid Caliphate was on the rise and much closer to the Andalusi borders. From the beginning of his reign, al-Rahman viewed the Fatimids as the real threat and after subduing internal rebellion finally felt secure enough to challenge them. Alongside the caliphal title, he adopted two honorifics: al-Nasir lidin Allah, meaning he who brings victory to God's religion, and the far lesser known al-Qaim bi Amr Allah, he who announces the day of judgment. The latter mirrored a Fatimid title and implied rivalry over the claim to be the true Mahdi, though this honorific soon fell into disuse as messianic expectations faded. Al-Nasir must have known it was unrealistic for the Umayyads to become caliphs of the entire Islamic world again, at least not in his lifetime. After all, the basis of his power was al-Andalus, which was an isolated island in the Islamic world. The Caliph of Córdoba confined his military actions in North Africa to occupying a few coastal sites and supporting Berber tribes in a proxy war against the Fatimids. His goals were dominance over the Iberian Peninsula, keeping the Christians in submission, and hegemonic influence in the western Maghreb to have a buffer zone between his core domains and the Fatimid Caliphate. Declaring the Caliphate was essential for countering Fatimid expansion and required a full ideological apparatus: propaganda, ceremonial, coinage, and historical narrative. Internally, the proclamation reinforced al-Rahman's authority and accelerated the submission of remaining rebels. The Umayyads worked to craft an interpretation of Andalusi history that justified their dominance over all of Iberia and countered both the Neo-Gothic Reconquista ideology of the Asturianese monarchy and the narratives of the rebels recently defeated in the Fitna. As Caliph, al-Nasir began constructing a new palace city near Córdoba, Madinat al-Zahra. He also reintroduced gold dinars after nearly 2 centuries without gold coinage, drawing on reopened local mines and sub-Saharan gold arriving through the Maghreb. These dinars carried his name and ideological messages, serving as instruments of propaganda. In religious policy, the Cordoban Umayyads behaved as caliphs by launching jihads against Christian kingdoms and against the Fatimids, supporting the Maliki legal school and suppressing religious movements seen as dangerous innovations. Through these measures, they presented themselves as guardians of orthodoxy and continuators of the Umayyad caliphs of Damascus and the early rally-guided caliphs and ultimately of the Prophet Muhammad. The end of the Fitna, the submission of Mérida, Badajoz, and Toledo. Before al-Nasir declared himself caliph, central authority was restored in Mérida in 928. The once important Roman and Visigothic city had become heavily depopulated after earlier revolts, the rise of Badajoz, and the departure of many locals, leaving it under the control of a Berber clan. The Berbers negotiated favorable surrender terms: exemption from some taxes, appointment of a Maghrebi Qadi, and integration of Berber cavalry into the professional army. A garrison of over 2,000 troops was stationed in the citadel, halting the city's long decline, though Badajoz still outshined it. In 929, al-Nasir and his heir, al-Hakam, marched against Badajoz, ruled by descendants of Ibn Marwan who refused to submit. After months of fierce resistance, Badajoz surrendered in 930. The ruling family was taken to Córdoba with a comfortable pension. Al-Nasir's forces also received the submission of the modern Portuguese cities of Beja and Faro, and several strongholds in Valencia such as Chátiva and Sagunto. Upon proclaiming himself caliph, al-Rahman III appointed new governors across al-Andalus except in Toledo, which continued to govern itself. Surrounded by loyalist territories, Toledo resisted diplomatic offers to obey Córdoba. Its ambiguous replies led to a siege in 930. The Caliph captured nearby fortresses and established a large camp city to signal that the siege would not be lifted until Toledo capitulated. The Toledans held out for 2 years and sought help from King Ramiro II of León, but as I explained earlier, internal problems in his kingdom prevented serious intervention. By mid-932, the small Leonese army he had sent could only harass the area around Madrid, and Toledo had no choice but to surrender. Its governor presented himself to the Caliph, who granted a generous pardon. Food was distributed to the starving population, and the Caliph ordered repairs to the city, including the Tagus Bridge, and built a citadel to discourage further rebellion. Despite the image of total victory promoted by court chroniclers, the Caliph had to concede much to ensure lasting peace and obedience. The terms of capitulation were as follows: Toledo gained recognition of substantial political autonomy, exemption from most taxes except the religiously required ones, and the right for the city's notables to choose municipal officials. In return, the city owed loyalty, tribute, and support in frontier defense and campaigns. This arrangement reflected a broader political reality. Al-Nasir could not apply the same level of centralization everywhere, and frontier zones required compromise. Yet the clear arrangements ensured stability, and the frontier saw none of the chronic rebellions of the Emirate period. Toledo's surrender marked the effective end of the Fitna, though some extended to 937, when Zaragoza's rulers submitted under similar terms. That will be covered in the next episode. The Battle for the Maghreb, the Andalusi conquest of Ceuta and Melilla. We return now to what historian José Luis de Villar Iglesias calls the Battle for the Maghreb between Umayyads and Fatimids. Early moments of friction included the Fatimid conquest of the Rustamid Imamate in 909 and their occupation of Nekor in 917. With Umayyad help, the Banu recovered Nekor, but the Fatimids continued expanding in North Africa. From the start of his reign, al-Rahman III reinforced coastal defenses, built new ships at Algeciras, and cultivated Berber allies. Broadly speaking, in the Umayyad-Fatimid proxy war, the Umayyads rely mainly on the Zanata Berbers, especially the Maghrawa and parts of the Miknasa, while the Fatimids drew support from the Kutama and Sanhaja. Idrisid princes, descendants of the Prophet, often shifted sides, while the Banu Salih remained loyal. By the early 920s, Fatimid armies pushed westward, seizing Sijilmasa and Fez, key cities for controlling the Maghreb and trans-Saharan trade. Resistance soon followed. The Idrisids retook Fez, and the Maghrawa defeated Fatimid forces and occupied Tahert. For decades, the Maghreb remained unstable, with cities changing hands and tribes shifting loyalties. Umayyad fortunes improved when al-Rahman seized Melilla in 927, taking advantage of the Fatimid failures in the western Maghreb. The city was small and poorly defended, but he fortified it immediately, as he needed a secure African base to lend troops, money, and supplies for his proxy war against the Shia Caliphate. As Idrisid power faltered again, he strengthened ties with the Maghrawa, who soon recognized his caliphal title. The main Fatimid ally in the region attacked Nekor in 929, ravaging the region. But in 931, two major events shifted the balance. First, a large Umayyad fleet conquered Ceuta to secure control of the Strait of Gibraltar. Ceuta had long been very receptive to Andalusi influence due to their strong commercial ties. Some chronicles claim the city's leaders actively requested Umayyad protection to avoid submitting to Idrisids or Fatimids. After the conquest, the arrival of Andalusi settlers restored the former glory of Ceuta as an important city with formidable walls and a busy port. Like modern Spanish Ceuta and Melilla, these enclaves came under direct administration from Córdoba, unlike other parts in the Maghreb that were governed by local allies under a sort of Andalusi protectorate. Moreover, a leading Fatimid ally among the Miknasa defected to the Umayyads. This shift gave the Caliphate of Córdoba a dominant position across much of the western and central Maghreb for a while. The verdict! One thing that must be read between the lines is that the Umayyads of Córdoba did not consider the Christians of the north a priority. They were not regarded as an existential threat, as the Fatimids were. Muslim military superiority still held, and campaigns against Christian realms served primarily to reinforce internal cohesion, display power, and bring in booty, slaves, crops, and livestock. Al-Andalus later declined, partly because it invested far less in its military than Christian polities did, as I explained on the YouTube channel in the video on why Christian Europe triumphed over the Islamic world. But in the 10th century, the Christians were seen as annoying but manageable neighbors. The struggle for legitimacy, influence, and survival against the Fatimid Caliphate outweighed concerns about the Christian North. And with that, the verdict ends. That's it for this episode on the political history of medieval Iberia. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, or get even more content by following the YouTube channel. Consider becoming a Patreon to enjoy numerous exclusive benefits such as 1 month early access to episodes of this main chronological series or appearing in the video credits. In the next episode, we will continue with the political history of the Caliphate of Córdoba and the Kingdom of León and Pamplona in the 930s, covering the Osma campaign, the submission of Zaragoza, and the Battle of Simancas Alhandega, which was disastrous for the Umayyads. Follow me so you don't miss it, and see you soon!